We now go to the gentlelady from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding today's hearing on this critical issue. These witnesses make clear the CCP is engaged in an insidious and expansive campaign to target U.S. economic interests and our national security through litigation and exploitation of U.S. policy. The CCP is capitalizing on weak non-compete laws in states like California, filing excessive invalid patents, and committing criminal espionage. In my home district, Chinese nationals and a Navy officer were indicted for attempting to steal a Navy vessel and take it to China. Had they succeeded, this one act would have provided the CCP with valuable information about our technology, our military, and our strategic defenses. It is an example of the significance of this type of investigation and this type of work by our federal law enforcement partners. The United States must do more to defend our country, to respect invention, and to encourage innovation. We must protect research, data, and intellectual property from theft, misuse, and infringement. And where we see unlawful conduct, we must commit ourselves to swift and strong enforcement. I thank our witnesses for their presence and their testimony today, which helps us shine a light on this threat to our economic strength and our national security. With that, Mr. Evanina, I would like to return to your testimony and the discussion related to the China initiative that you were offering earlier. And specifically, I would like to visit the subject of our institutions of higher learning and our universities. Would you please speak to, we know that China has been attempting now very aggressively to infiltrate some of our universities, to steal intellectual property there, and to benefit from the innovation and research that is occurring on American university campuses. Would you please speak to what the China initiative was doing in that regard and what we need to be doing going forward to protect those institutions?
Thanks for the question, Congresswoman. I think when you look at the question you pose on academic institutions, it's the bedrock for what makes America the best country ever. And part of that is the collaborative mindset and ideology for a university setting. Also provides the most vulnerability, specifically to the Communist Party of China, to penetrate that, not only with students, with professors, with deans, to be able to take that early access ideation all the way up to the patent perspective in a free and open environment. I've had the opportunity to speak to over 140 university presidents the last 5 years about this issue. It's a dire issue, but it's really complicated in facts. And I think, from my perspective, when the FBI or law enforcement comes on the campus to investigate, it's too late. The information is already gone. I think we have to do two things here. We have to look at that ideation process and have a compliance structure that's not only put in place by academics, but also supervised and governed from a compliance perspective, either by the states or U.S. Congress. Secondarily, for those Chinese students who come here every year to study, which is well over 300,000 per year, we're only really worried about a handful of postgraduate STEM programs. I think if we, as the United States and the Congress, gave every single student who came from China a cell phone, a mobile phone they could use, that provides some independence from the Communist Party regime, I think that'll go a long way with not only winning the hearts and minds of those students, but also putting perspective of compliance in place at the university.
And a moment ago, you mentioned a particular concern about data theft. Tell me how data theft plays into the overall threat we're facing from this adversary.
Sure. Well, I think data is the new global commodity. And I think the Chinese Communist Party got to that fact way before we did. And I think when we look back over the last 5 to 7 years, the amount of data theft that occurred from cyber breaches and insiders really connotates the direction for what Xi Jinping wants to not only drive their AI, but their targeted American citizens, global citizens around the world. You can only have the best AI and quantum computing if you have the most data to run it against. And that's been part of the strategic plan for the Communist Party of China, is to acquire the global repository of data through theft and otherwise.
And then, Mr. Cohen, a follow-up question for you. A moment ago, you referenced the lack of transparency in the Chinese court system. And I know you made reference also to, at times, the failure to report decisions and how that can be an important aspect of us understanding the nature of the threat that we face in the arena of the courts. Would you please elaborate on that lack of transparency and why it is important to protect American interests?
I feel like I should be back at school teaching. This is a long lecture in my Chinese IP class. About 2014, China started making its court decisions available online. Probably the biggest development in rule of law internationally of the past decade. I checked a few days ago, there were 1.4 billion visits to that webpage, 131 million documents on that site. So there's a lot of content there. We've lit the proverbial candle in the dark room in terms of knowing something of how Chinese courts work, how IP decisions are made, but it's hardly fully illuminated. And what is not illuminated are the cases that are hidden from us. And these cases are not published for a variety of reasons. Many of them are small or inconsequential. Many contain confidential information, particularly the trade secret cases, and China doesn't publish cases having confidential information. That's part of the reason we know so little about the trade secret environment in China. In fact, of the published cases, about 600 of them over the past several years, only 5 of them involve foreigners. 5. Were there more than that? Possibly, but it's an extremely small cohort to make a decision. So encouraging full transparency, and the court system, by the way, is light years ahead of the administrative system, which has a docket nearly as big. China had 600,000 civil IP cases last year. 600, that is a huge number, and about 12,000 criminal cases. The lack of insight into how those cases function haunts us in so many ways. Are we treated fairly? Are the courts handling things, technical matters, in an appropriate manner? How much bias is there? What about anti-suit injunctions or other remedies that China issues? I mentioned a company called...
Mr. Cohen, I'm going to have to ask you to put the rest in for the record.
Okay, but in any event, this is a critical issue to understand the environment. Thank you.
Thank you.